Oh my. Mostly I liked school for the friendships. All my friends were at school, and I'd wake up and I couldn't wait to get to school to see my friends. I remember my best friend in 6th grade was a boy named Joe Bryant, who was a Jehovah's Witness, and I was still a Catholic, and I believed Joe was going to hell. So made it my purpose in life to point out the errors of his religion and convert him to the one true church, which happened to be the church I attended. As it turns out, Joe felt the same way about his faith, so even as I was trying to convince him to join the one true church, he was doing the same to me. The odds, of course, were in my favor. Catholics celebrating birthdays and Christmas, and Jehovah's Witnesses not. Plus, I told him, we Catholics have devised the best religious system ever devised. We could do anything we wanted so long as we went to confession every week. While I later learned that wasn't exactly true, I believed it to be true and almost had Joe talked into visiting the one true church with me, but then he and his family moved away and I never saw him again. But I think of him often, Joe, all these years later, and remember our playground disputes, each of us zealously defending a faith we had no say in joining. Despite the differences in our faith, Joe and I both learned the one truth common to most faiths, that religion at its heart was adversarial. That for my religion to be right, all others were necessarily wrong. And that it was my job, nay, my sacred duty, to tell them so. The founder of Quakerism, George Fox, believed this so deeply, so fervently, he made it his custom to visit other churches where he would stand and interrupt the sermon and argue with the minister. This often ended in his arrest, which in his mind only verified the veracity of his beliefs, it being common among fanatics to believe any difficulty they suffer is an indication of God's favor. Since we've been diligent in our praise of Quakerism, it behooves us to acknowledge our shortcomings, hence this sermon series that we've called, What in the World Were We Thinking? Today, I would add to our list the tendency of early friends to believe our relationship with other faiths was primarily adversarial. We believed that for us to be right, others had to be wrong, and it was our sacred duty to inform them of their error. Shortly after our founding, when Quakers were beginning to flock to America and experiencing persecution and even death, the founder of Rhode Island, the Baptist Roger Williams, promised Quakers they could find freedom in the colony of Rhode Island, and so Quakers flocked there. Despite Roger Williams' hospitality to us, George Fox wrote a triumphalistic pamphlet pointing out all the theological errors of Roger Williams and the Baptist faith. The pamphlet was called The Boasting Baptist Badly Beaten. And this is how we treated our protectors. What in the world were we thinking? I'll mention Jim Mulholland since he's with us this morning. When Jim and I met in seminary, He was an American Baptist minister, pastoring eventually, pretty quickly after we started in seminary, a United Methodist church, Victory United Methodist in Fountain Square. And I was determined, as I got to know Jim better, to make him a Quaker, because, you know, I thought we were the one true church. And so I had a copy of the Journal of George Fox, which I gave him, urging him to read it, convinced it would cause him to see the light and become a Quaker. How could he not? So he read it and then gave it back to me, and I asked him, what did you think of that? Wasn't that George Fox just amazing? And Jim, who had majored in psychology in college, said, honestly, I think he was nuts. When I pointed out that the word nuts could not be found in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, he nevertheless insisted that George Fox was 2 eggs short of a dozen. Now, some 36 years later, I find myself agreeing. There is something nutty when we require others to be wrong so we can be right. There's something nutty about that. But with a few exceptions, this mindset is endemic to religion. We can fill a stadium or win public office denouncing people of other faiths when interfaith gatherings can't fill a conference room at the Holiday Inn. There is something about us that causes us to fear and even despise those who think differently. What is it about religion that makes our relationship so adversarial, so antagonistic? Can it be religion's tendency to deal in absolutes, in certainties, which always, you have noticed, leave little room for cooperation and mutuality? Here's what I've been thinking. If religion is the vehicle for our moral growth, and this is what most religions claim to be, the arbiter of morality, and we embrace that role. We took our children to church so they could learn a moral code. So if religion is the means by which we morally evolve, doesn't it stand to reason that religion itself should morally evolve by growing out of its sectarian, absolutist tendencies and move toward a more tolerant humanism? What would this look like? Perhaps like this. We would no longer have as our goal the pleasing of God. This is what drives this all the time. I want to please God. I want to find God's favor. So I will believe the right thing, and I will let those who don't believe the right thing, I will let them know of their error. But what would happen if we no longer had as our goal the pleasing of God, whom we cannot see, whom no one has ever seen, but instead would have as our goal the betterment of our fellow humans, whom we do see, whom we do experience every day of our lives? If this were our goal, religion would no longer be adversarial, but cooperative. We would not concern ourselves with the perceived errors and heresies of others, but would keep our eyes peeled for beauty, for truth, wherever they were found, with no regard for their origins. We wouldn't hear something beautiful and dismissive out of hand because it didn't come from us or our kind. I have little interest in any religion whose chief goal is the triumphant conquest of other faiths. Such religions will be the death of us all. But I am very interested in any social movement that fosters and promotes mutuality, compassion, and our ethical evolution. I'll tell you what I believe. I believe that God is never found in our ultimatums, in our final and uncompromising assertions. I believe God is found in our curiosity, in our wonder, in our heartfelt desire to learn not just from those who most resemble us, but especially from those who don't.